All right, we're back with the dreaded part 3 here. This is pretty, it feels pretty much like the last one, except for we need to um, we need to graph them first. So it kind of feels like this one here, where we actually just have to graph them first, and that's the way we'll approach it. We'll see, the sum function when we calculate it here. Let's calculate it, because it's just f minus g at x is equal to f at x minus g at x. That f at x is 0.5x and g at x is cos x. Well, I don't know how to graph that, right? I don't know what this function looks like here. I'm going to graph the pieces and then assemble them, put them together in the way that I did in the last example. So that's the plan. But before I do that, let's think for a second of the domain, right? The domain, let's do it this way. I think of the domain of f. F is, well, what is this thing, by the way? F is it's just a line, right? With the slope is 0.5 and the y-intercept is 0, so it goes through 0, 0 and has a slope of a half. So it's just a line that keeps going up. What's the domain? Well, no restrictions on that. For the range, what is it? Well, it's going to get to every single y value as well. What about g? G, the domain, I can take the cos of anything. X is all real numbers. Now, what's the range? The range of this one is between -1 and 1, right? So that's the range of that one. Let's think for a second about the combination before we actually go ahead and graph it. What's the domain? Well, we said earlier, to be in the domain of the combination, you have to be in the domain of the individual pieces. Have to be in the domain of this and this. Well, these are all real numbers. These are all real numbers. What do you think the domain of the difference function is going to be? It's going to be all real numbers. And for this one, this is more difficult, right? We said, let's get a graph and think, well, hang on here. Think of this. What this function is. This is a line that goes up by a slope of a half forever, and then cos might be subtracting a little bit or adding a little bit between 1 and 1. So, if I think of, and you don't necessarily have to draw the sketch, but I'm just adding a little bit, 1 and 1 to this on either side of this axis. It's going to reach all real numbers. We don't know this for sure, but I think it might be all real numbers. All right, this is just the cos graph untransformed. It should be easy peasy for us. Now, one thing that's weird here is that we've got a line from grade 9, a trig function from grade 11 or grade 12, and how do I put them on the same graph? Well, what's the hardest one to graph? The cos function, right? So I'm going to go by the scale that we know for the cos function, which is every 3 points, important tick. Every 3 points, important tick. Every 3 points, important tick. And I'm just going to see, how do I graph a slope of a half with that? Well, I'm going to have to think about that later. All right, and where's my 1? I'll maybe have 1 and -1 there. My green and red for this one I'm going to do in green. I'm going to do G in green. With this scale, it actually turns out that the line is harder to graph. Well, that's not very good. Oh well, you guys do a good job. All right, so this is G. And F, how do I do this? I know it goes through 0, 0. But how do I get my next point? Well, I could just calculate some next points. So for instance, my next important point for my cosine function was at pi over 2. For an x coordinate of pi over 2, what's my y coordinate when I have a half x? I could calculate it, right? And I'm not going to be exact here because it's just going to be half of what the input is. Pi is around 3, right? This is around 3. A half of 3 is You know, pi is around 3. A half of 3 is 1.5, and then I have a half of that again is about 0.75. About. Well, there's 1. There's about 0.75. And notice it's a line. So I can almost use the pattern and just keep on going up like that. So for pi, half pi is then, well, half pi, which is, we said that's about 1.5, which would be about here. And notice, once I get a line going, I can sort of follow the pattern. Over 3, up 1.5, and so on. And so then I get my, I should use a ruler. That was ugly. That was ugly. All right, dandy. Maybe I should have went off into the negatives a little bit because that might have been interesting, but we're okay. I think we'll get the idea from this graph, making this red. Okay, and so how do I combine them? Well, I'm going to take the F values, and I'm going to subtract the G values, red minus green, and I'm going to get my new function, which is going to be blue. 0 minus 1 is minus 1. Notice my next point here would be 1 minus 0. Right? Red is 1 is the F function. Minus 0 is going to be right there. So notice that in between there, I must have a 0, right? I got 1 on the negative side, 1 on the positive side. There's got to be a 0 in here somewhere. Well, where is it 0? It's 0 where they touch, right? Whatever that is, bang, bang, they're equal. It's going to be 0 there, and I'm going to keep going now. I'm going to skip to the next points, even though, you know, there's other points in here, and even the not nice points, I could go, you know, red, subtract green. There's 1, subtract another square. That's going to be up here somewhere. I could do that, but I'm just going to skip to the nice points. Red, subtract green. Red, subtract green. Red, subtract green is there, and I get a function that looks something like this. That is pretty crazy and cool. This is the graph F minus G at X. Notice, if you sort of tilt your head, what's happened is the axis for the cos function is now going off at an angle, and I can see this is going to, is it going to be all real numbers? Yeah, I can see it going back down and getting all the negative y values and going up and getting all the positive values. That is a pretty cool graph. Where would that ever show up in real life? Well, probably never, right? No. We'll see. We'll see. Good patience today, folks, sitting through the 3 videos. Homework is not bad, right? So this is 5 questions for 75 minutes. We should be able to zoom through it, and it is mostly review.